I'm Averie.
And I'm Mel.
This is the Veda Lounge podcast.
All things Vedic, cosmic, and magic.
For yoga teachers, entrepreneurs, creatives, and coming back to your own center.
We explore themes on living like you practice to knowing your nature.
Join the conversation for an embodied homecoming to illuminate your radiance.
Through getting nerdy with Vedic sciences and self-discovery, cozy into your cosmic cadence. Hello, welcome back to the Veda Lounge podcast. It's Mel here.
And Averie, hello.
We are excited to cozy up. If you're watching on YouTube, my face is glowing and shiny because I just had a magnificent facial today. So, which is perfect for what we're talking about on self-care today and really the art of surrender.
Absolutely. You are very shiny. I wish everyone could see this, but it looks like glowy, shiny.
Yes, very well moisturized. And actually, the person I go see, so she blends in lymphatic draining with the facials. And I have seen such a difference in my health since incorporating lymphatic drain. And I've been learning about it slowly over the years, but there's just something about, I feel like lymph is something that a lot of people, unless you understand and know about it, we don't really think much about it. But like how self-massage, especially down like our jaw, down our throat, and that pressing into the chest, like all of this area can get full of fluid. And so moving all of that is just, and even through the face, it's so powerful.
I bet it, does it feel yummy as it happens, or is it extra? I've never had it done. Is it like funky? Does it feel weird?
It depends, right? Like it can feel really good on the face. And actually, if somebody's dealing with congestion, like my daughter was super congested on Sunday and Monday. And so like I was working I don't know what to call it. It's the sinus. It's like those areas, but just very subtle touch. And she was laying on my lap and I was just doing this to move the fluid. And it's crazy how the draining really helped. But as far as how it feels, in some cases, I think the face feels so good. But for me, when you kind of get into the jaw, like underneath the ear, it can feel a little crunchy. It can feel like tender. And I think it just depends on the technique though, because it's a really subtle touch. And in some cases, you can kind of feel the fluid moving. It's interesting. Think about, it's like draining, right? Like if you think about in Vedic, right, they talk about the nadis. Like we have these rivers in our bodies. And so it's literally like removing the fluid down these different rivers and these channels.
I'm inspired. I'll hit a rabbit hole after this. But nonetheless, it is a perfect way, as we're about to talk about self-care, and Mel just describes to us the beautiful facial that she had.
I really love when providers innovate different things together into one because, it's just, especially, I think, like estheticians and like getting facials. And I know eventually we're going to have some guests on this podcast that have incredible skills and wisdom in this. But I have learned that taking care of the skin, because it's the largest organ of the body, it does, like from the outside in, so much, and it's just so grounding for me. And a lot of people don't realize this, but other than getting my lashes done, I don't wear any makeup ever. The only thing I have is my lashes, and I swear it's because of my facials. I'm consistent with the facials and the draining.
Well, I love that. Segue in, let's chat about what's happening. Let's chat about the importance of self-care right now, and just how in this pivotal season, right, it's really going to be themed around surrender, right? And letting a form of our self-care be life rearranging itself and opening up ourselves to that. Because I think there's a lot of that happening right now. I think collectively, we're really in a shift. So
I love how you just said that self-care is allowing life to rearrange. And I think that's such a true statement because we tend to fight and resist, especially when things out of our control are shifting. And yeah, this is a really big time frame, and it's collective. Everybody who's listening, I'm sure you have seen it, and you can tell. Look at the theater of reality, or the Matrix, everything that's going on out there. And so when we see stuff like this, we can obviously sense that there's these changes, but according to the astrology, right now we're preparing for Pluto to go back to Capricorn on Sunday, and it's going to be there until November 18th or 19th. And then it'll go back to Aquarius, but we're then in Pluto Aquarius until 2044. And so what makes this so special is, and this goes in with any astrology, it's the rarity of the events. If it's a rare event, that's what makes it very special. So the last time we saw this was during, the revolution and the start of the United States. So this is the United States Pluto return. And a lot of people are talking about this of being a really pivotal time for our country, but also collectively. And then you also look at how there's other astrological rarities happening simultaneous to what's going on with Pluto. And when we understand that when there's a rarity, and a lot of people have been like, I feel like it's been crazy for a long time. It's like, yeah, as technically since the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction in 2020 happened, since then, it's been rarity after rarity after rarity. And quite honestly, probably after 2030, 2030, it's going to get kind of boring. Like this rarity, this is a rare time. So when we look at, if there's a lot of energy uprooting things, how that affects us is immense. And self-care is such a non-negotiable as we move through these shifts.
Absolutely. I think when we talk about too, I mean, just so people know, with Pluto moving back, when we say back into Capricorn, that means we got a little flavor, right, of what Pluto and Aquarius is going to look like, but we're not quite settled there. And so it can almost feel like a bit of like a slingshot. Like we were like, oh, this is what we're looking at, but just kidding. Now we're going to go back. And I think when that happens, we get really stuck on trying to hold on to certain ways of life, certain ways of doing things, certain structures. So in saying that, a big part of that self-care is going to be learning how to just let it go, and to flow with things. And that doesn't mean you just throw your hands up and you're like, oh, well, not doing anything, but in a sense, shedding a little bit of our resistance to change.
Well, because we don't know what the change is bringing into, right? Like a lot of times, whenever there's an evolution occurring, it's not comfortable. Look at the caterpillar turning into a butterfly, right? It's not necessarily comfortable, but it's necessary for not only our souls to evolve, but for us to be dynamic as humans. And I think it's really about, to take it even deeper, like if we look at, well, what's the high octave of Capricorn, where we've been, it's progressing somewhere. And it forces us, like this retrograde back in, and for those listening, retrogrades, literally we're talking about what's happening in the sky. Is it moving forward? Is it moving backwards, right? So when we see this occur, it's going to ask the questions of, since 2007, 2008, that time frame, 2006, are you proud of what you've progressed into? And it's odd because that's an edgy question, because that's a long period of time, but it's going to be our last moment of going, did I make the movements? Did I do the Capricorn thing? Did I build and progress? And it's like a second chance this fall to do that as we step into Aquarius, which is a high octave of your uniqueness and belonging, right? The collective humanity. And everybody is equal in a sense, but in our uniqueness and in our freedom. That's why Aquarius is the rebel. So it's an exciting opportunity. And then when I know I'm kind of going on and on about this, but one last thing I want to say with this Capricorn thing is for progression to occur in ourselves, It calls in self-responsibility, because keeping in mind Capricorn's ruled by Saturn. So it calls in this self-responsibility to have self-respect. And self-respect is really us coming back or giving ourselves back to ourselves. Like that I love myself enough to say no. I love myself enough to say yes. I'm going to brave this. I'm going to progress in this. I'm going to be patient and determined to grow into something. So if we're hesitant and stagnant right now, it might not be because of nothing happening. It might just be we're holding ourselves back. So asking our own hearts, what am I trying to progress into? What do I want to see occur for me in this season, this time? Get clear about it, and then say yes to the things that align and trust that it's unfolding for you, right? So it's that simultaneous of showing up when you need to, but also don't be attached to the outcomes, because we're moving into a whole new texture of reality.
Well, I love that the key word here is build, right? And I think when I think of Capricorn, that's the biggest thing. So it's exactly assessing what we've built over the last, my God, how many years since 20, what? How long have we been there? 2007. And that's a big daunting question, but it's such this like special time period as we move back, where it really is the opportunity to look at what we've built and see if it aligns moving forward. And then it gives us that wiggle room, right? To say, if I'm not attached to what I've built, if I don't like it, it's this really potent time where we have the power to shift it before we walk into something brand new. And so I love the idea of like getting settled in the self right before we move into this bigger and greater collective age of Aquarius. I don't know. What are some really powerful, potent ways that you think? I mean, obviously, asking the question and doing the reflection and looking, right? And going back, but how else can we prime ourselves for that? What are other self care modes and ways that we can really take a look and really set ourselves up?
Well, I would say if we viewed self care as we have active self care and then we have restorative self care, right? So, active self care is doing what our future self will be grateful that we did, right? So, it's like instead of leaving the laundry out, I put it away so I don't have to deal with that tomorrow. And my future self is happy tomorrow because I don't have to deal with that tomorrow. So, an example of that for self care, especially in this, is to reflect and process with compassion, right? Because Capricorn can be really tough. And if you look at, there's been a huge tone of the hierarchies in our culture, the influencer, the growing and building to get to the top of the corporate ladder, those types of structures and systems. When we look at our failures, because gold is found in the failures, character is built through the struggles. Can we honor what we've accomplished through not getting what we want that has built the endurance for us to know who we are versus who we're not? Because oftentimes we're not, or it's through the hard challenges or building stuff that you actually learn more about yourself. So Capricorn gives us that identity of courage and it's the worker bee building to something meaningful. The restorative self-care side of the house says, how can you collaborate with the active mind trying to solve it all? Because right now is not the time to solve it all, but rather bring closure, finally say yes to the thing, trust the changes, ride the waves of change and what's coming up present in the moment for you. And it's not fighting. Like that's a big thing is what's for you won't miss you. And so how can you rest your mind in different practices or affirmations to be able to walk through this? Because this is just it's a small season and when we zoom out, but it can feel really heavy. And we're probably going to see it in our culture and in the collective of the fall getting really intense in different ways. And so being accountable for ourselves, again, Capricorn's ruled by Saturn, y'all. So is Aquarius. Aquarius in Western ruled by Uranus, which is more bold, unexpected rebellion. But in Vedic, Aquarius is ruled by Saturn because it's It's service. It's about being in service to humanity.
Yeah.
So when we're in the window in between, what's happening is, what did I build that's going to serve humanity? So as you're processing all this from
Mhm.
from the past several years, now it's taking what you did. If you just got to the top because it looks cool, that's going to probably fall apart. How are I'm just saying, right? Because when we look at this evolution, it's going, how am I going to use what I built to be in service to the uniqueness of humans, to humanity, and through my uniqueness, through my gifts, right? Don't hide your gifts anymore. It's not a time to hide those gifts.
Absolutely. I think it's important too to remember, as I mean, the both, right? Cap is ruled by Saturn, Aquarius is also ruled by Saturn, Vedic, but to be, in a sense, a little gentle with ourselves because it's pressure. It's to remember that, like, it might feel like we're in a pressure cooker. And that's because it's the influence of Saturn. So, as we're speaking all these things and the duty to self and then duty to the collective as we move forward, it's important, I think, especially for myself, I've felt the necessity to not be so hard on myself. And it's that's been the biggest form of self-care, is I have to actively remind myself, because we are under that Saturnian influence. That is, it can feel right, very, very like, well, what have you built and why have you built it? And we can put this immense pressure on ourselves. So, even viewing our self care as a way to step outside of that pressure a little bit, because I know it can feel very heavy, like you said.
Well, and it's asking us to take responsibility for, okay, if I'm feeling pressure, is it because I'm subscribing to an outdated belief? Or is it the, I'm hesitating with trusting the unfolding, so now I'm feeling pressure because I'm not flowing? And it's like a little tough love, because, I mean, Saturn is tough love in the sense of taking that responsibility for what we're bringing forth and what we're experiencing in our life. Like, this is not a someone's going to rescue you moment. And it's also not, or it may end up being actually, that you arrived somewhere and it's not what you thought it was. That you made it to the top and it's really lonely now, or you don't, it's not what you wanted, or you thought you worked for something and now you're realizing a new revelation. So this is where you're seeing a lot of people making job changes, life changes,
Mm.
breakups, like all types of things happening right now,
Yeah.
because it's that realization.
Oof.
Well,
Oof.
and if you think about one last thing too, it's so empowering when we go, you know what, I am going, this is third chakra stuff, right? I choose. I'm going to have the will to make these choices that are aligned to my uniqueness. And when we take responsibility for those parts of ourselves, the shame starts to dissipate, right? The action, because remember, third chakra shadow is shame. So the action that I'm taking, honoring my will and my power, right? That's going to offset these old stories that we've been feeling around not being good enough. You know, a fun little thing is I'm doing a free, or not, well, not unless you're in Mel Marie trainings and stuff. It's free for our students and graduates, but I think, I don't know what the price is. It doesn't matter. The point is, I'm doing this publishing workshop in September, and I'm doing it for our community, and I'm doing it for the teachers and the graduates, because so many people have amazing gifts that the world would benefit from so much. But a lot of people feel like, I can't be an author, I can't write a book, that's really hard. But it's interesting because moving into Aquarius, well, the way that Amazon publishing makes it, it is so easy. Everybody can be an author, right? And part of it is leaving these old shame beliefs behind around adequacy, that we all belong.
Well, and structure an old belief, or like belief in old structure, right? Because that very well might have been true in this previous age, where it was hard to find a publisher. It was hard to get picked up. But it's like, it's remembering that even those teeny tiny things will shift and change, where you're like, wait, actually, no, it's not. Like, it can be, oh, I love that. I love that example.
It
Mhm.
really is. I mean, Aquarius is about your local communities, your communities, like gathering. And and being in the uniqueness of who we are, not fitting into these structures that, again, it's very interesting to see how society is shifting with it. But this kind of goes full circle when Averie was talking about surrender, right? And it's how it can be really scary to let go of what we know or old ways of doing things. But we have to be sober in remembering that we create and pave paths, and that as you walk, more clarity comes, right? And like being patient with the data through the experiences you're getting. Like I'll when I'm feeling unsure, I'm like, okay, it's because I'm in a time frame right now of just getting data. So just collect the data. Oh, interesting. Ah, just data.
Oh man, I will add to like, I mean, I think as we speak today, right, Mercury just went direct. So I think that will help with a lot of, I think there's a lot of confusion stuff too with it, right? As Pluto sits at that zero, as Mercury is just beginning to move direct again. Hopefully we feel like a little more sense of clarity, because I think confusion's been a big thing, kind of especially clouding the last week as we've shifted back. But I will say it's like you said, when you just take in the data, we have to, right? And as Mercury begins to move direct, hopefully it clears those channels a little bit more for us to be able to receive the sensory information, right? And begin to kind of make sense of it a little bit.
Well, and this is why presence is so important too, right? Because if you're not present, you will miss the data. You know, yoga teaches us to participate with the present moment. So, what's here right now, and appreciating where you're at, how far you've come, and that you still have a canvas ahead of you that you get to paint on whatever expression you desire. And it's untangling out of the belief that, oh, well, I can't paint like that, or I can't do this. And that hesitation, because when we hesitate with the universe or when we hesitate with life, it will hesitate right back. And unfortunately, that volume dial is probably going to get louder. And so that's why, again, you know, if it's happening for you, just let it unfold, you know? Like if it's out of your control and it's coming in as these options and these things, be very curious about it. Be present with it, because there's, you know, really we're just collaborating with, I feel like it's a way that we collaborate with God between free will and these opportunities that come, you know?
And I think you mentioned an important point of, being in collaboration with it. And I think what happens is we talk about surrender, and as we talk about accepting the change, what can be really difficult, and I know personally I felt it, is where do you surrender, right? And where do you keep fighting? Because life, it's, you can't exist in one or with just one or the other, right? We have to give, but we also have to take a little from life. We have to exert effort, right? We can't just say, oh, well, gone to the wind, I'm surrendering, life's going to rearrange itself, and that's beautiful. And so it's knowing where to let go. And that comes from present awareness. That comes from sitting with yourself and saying, well, this feels right, or this doesn't feel right, or I feel right. Allowing ourselves to really soak it in and sit with what is in front of us, because it gets so diluted through all the external noise, through everything that, the belief patterns and things like this, where it's like, sitting just with the blank of what actually feels aligned. Because I get that question a lot where people are like, well, how do I just let go? Like, I also have to live my life. I have to show up to work. I have to, fight for the things I want. And my answer is always like, well, no, know what you're fighting for. Because sometimes I think we're just fighting to hold on to things for the sake of holding on, without even truly asking ourselves, why or what am I holding on to? And what is the purpose? What is it serving?
I mean, that self-awareness is imperative, right? Like if we don't know why, and this is partly where we're going so fast with things, and or we're just doing what we think we're supposed to do. I mean, like example, right? As a business owner, years ago, it was like, pay for advertising, do this as a business owner, do this. And for so many, again, this is very Capricorn. Okay, we got to do this next step, this next step. So we've almost disassociated out of the inquiry around what we're doing. And so when we think about surrender, absolutely, it is not, and especially with this energy, it's not that we just go watch Netflix for the next 10 days and see what happens. No, 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 no. And if you're doing that, I invite you to wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, do some back bends, breathe, get up, and go see what your backyard has in store for you. Go explore, go do something, because this is really about having direction, but not necessarily decision. You'll know when the decision comes. And it's like fishing, right? You're like, is the fish biting? Is the fish biting? You'll feel when the fish bites. And so being able to listen to our bodies, like when the awareness of a yes or a no, how does that feel in your body? And you can practice. Did we ever talk about the body pendulum? Did we talk about that?
Yes, yes.
Did we talk about it on the podcast?
We did, but you should mention it because it's so powerful. And I've actually used it quite a few times. And I think it's such a great tool, obviously, and within within reason.
Yes. Oh yeah, like obviously don't overdo this, but like if for example an opportunity comes up and as you're listening or reading, does your body magnetize to it? Does it move forward towards it, or do you feel this gut and your body moving back? Because your body's going to pull towards a yes. It's going to retract from a no. So learning to listen to the notifications of our body and how it responds. I mean, this is huge for being able to discern what is for us, what is not, because we can talk ourselves out of everything, and we can also talk ourselves into anything. And so being able to really drop into, I'm going to listen to what's coming up. And many of people know I don't love the word acceptance. I just don't. But we can reconcile. And, a friend of mine had said, because I was like, I just hate this word. But she was like, what if instead, because there's things that we don't have to be okay with. You don't have to be okay with what is changing in your life, but can you reconcile it? Can you at least look at it? Can you have inquiry with it and be patient with yourself as you start to make these changes, and trust that more data and clarity is going to arrive if you walk in a little bit deeper, right? Just keep walking. So that's the hard thing is just to keep walking and being, that's why I think if we come in with a mindset of curiosity, that's going to really help the availability to get the information and the clarity to be able to really direct. And it's gonna, things are gonna unexpectedly happen, that are gonna pop up.
Well, and it's such this weird dichotomy because, right, what we're seeking in the moment is clarity. And when we seek and cling to needing to know, that, right, is when we cling to the things. And so it's this weird thing of like, yes, we know we want the clarity, but like you said, it's sitting with trusting, tread just a little further, clarity will come, but you have to release the grip, right? Palms open, and it's gonna come, but that's the hardest part, I think, especially in this time period as things shift and we're like, oh, but I need to know, I want to know, right? Humans are very much so like we want the answers and we want them now and we want to know what's happening. But it's not all that concrete,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and this is where, again, moving out of Capricorn into Aquarius, Capricorn's very much like make a decision, right way, wrong way, and very much more strict, where Aquarius is a little nuanced, right? So it's remembering, and this has always been true, but you get to change your mind. I feel like if people would allow themselves to walk through life with the reminder that I can learn new information and change my mind, all of a sudden, how much freedom we would have as a collective and just how much ease. Because, people will hold on to old beliefs even after they get new information that clearly doesn't resonate with what their heart is saying. But they won't change and evolve with the new data or the new experiences. right? But remembering the truth is that you have free will. It's okay to change your mind when you get new information.
Absolutely. Well, and my hope is that as we shift into this time period, right? Because like you said, Capricorn can be rigid. And that can be a big part, right, of why we stay locked in and why we don't allow ourselves the privilege of changing our mind because we're so stuck to the structure that we've created, right? Physically and also mentally. We forget a lot of times that like Cap can also be really mental structure, right? In the ways in which we calculate and evolve and think. So my hope is, yeah, as we do move in and we get deeper into this age, that we all lighten up a little bit. Can we just lighten up? I mean, but truthfully,
Yeah. No, lightheartedness is so, it is one of the greatest gifts to the people around you. And it makes life a lot easier. And if anyone's ever done yoga with me, I'm a very lighthearted teacher. And those I train, I'm like, teaching from a lighthearted context is going to actually make everybody feel a little bit more grounded. And it creates a more supportive space in a lot of ways where we allow people to be themselves. We approach things with not taking it too serious. I just shared this quote with someone the other day. But years ago, I heard a quote from Deepak Chopra, and it said, "Never take a serious person too serious because they have too much self-righteousness." And it always makes me giggle, ever since especially hearing that. For some reason, when I first heard that, it was like, oh, because whether it was certain colleagues or experience that I had were the people who are so serious. It's just like that. Talk about gripping. And it's like surrender is the permission to play with the now moment as it arrives. It's also the permission to meet yourself in the version of you that is in this now moment. And then a different version of you might be in the next now moment. And we just flirt with the unfolding. Like it's just playful. Because honestly, if we really look at life, experiencing joy, love, and a lightness, like not just bright light, but light like a feather light, like this lightness in our heart. That is, those are the moments that most humans desire and cherish, right? We're all trying to find happiness. We're all trying to find peace, right? But a lot of us don't realize that the answer is within. It's the state of consciousness that we're operating from. And so if we can laugh a little bit and be weird, and that's what I love about Aquarius is kind of weird, It's
oh,
like,
very weird.
yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's just so funny. Honestly, it makes me think of, I was seeing on social media, I guess a couple weeks ago, there was like a week where everything in politics, everybody was just calling each other weird. And I thought it was so funny because, somebody was like, that's weird, this weird. Everybody was telling you, like, it was like children. It was
Yeah,
it was weird.
it was weird.
I'm like, yeah, we're moving into Aquarius. I'm like,
Oh my gosh. It's so funny. I always so fun fact when I just finished teaching this last week, but when I teach about the zodiacs, I often tell people it's really big. We tend to personify them. So we're like, oh, it's weird. It would be like this weird eccentric ant or person or whatever. That's Aquarius. But I've like tried to shift their thinking a little bit. And I'm like, think of it as like a place. What would the environment be? Because we teach it that way, right? And so I'm like, in the group, I'm like, what would Aquarius be if it were a place, if it were an environment? And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to ask Mel this next time I see, because we're like playing this funky game. But I'm like, I truly think it's like, we're in outer space. It's weird. It's like Xenon from Disney Channel. Everybody's in their funky, weird outfits and nobody speaks the same language. But we're all trying to collectively understand it. Like it's, yeah.
very much so, and
Yeah.
but we have to remember the low octave of Aquarius environment could be like very cold, work camps. It can be, it's like connection, because remember everything is dualistic, right? So it's like What we're wanting to happen is that we're moving into this collective compassion and unity in the sense of everybody being in their uniqueness, right? But the shadow or the opposite of that is everything is uniform and it's Hunger Games and it's sketchy. And I don't want to scare people, but you have to be mindful. Like it's a weird, it can go that way where everybody's the same.
And the difference is, right, it depends how we show up in it. And the interesting thing is with Aquarius specifically, it rides a lot on how we show up collectively
Mm-hmm.
because
Yep.
that is right what it represents. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And it also, when you talk about how we show up, it's very true. And some of y'all know I love Dolores Cannon and all of her work. And I'm just so fascinated. I'm so fascinated by consciousness and physics and a lot of those things. If you train with me, I go there. I'm nerdy, very intrigued by history and just science in general. But when you look at how the reality, and I saw this years ago, but realizing, or actually, okay, let me circle back to Dolores Cannon. She talks about like the earth splitting, right? Like there's two different types of consciousness or two, whatever. That's kind of where that stuff is coming from. But when you look at really as humans, we all have our own reality that we perceive from.
Mm.
And so there's reality, but at the end of the day, the truth is that every human has their own reality that's informed by their state of perspective, their state of coherence, their beliefs, their programs. Like we are compounded, wrapped up into our own uniqueness naturally. That's why Aquarius advocates for the human, right? Because even if you look at we ourselves, right? Each cell in our body is its own entity from an electromagnetic standpoint, but it comes together to create this wholeness that we are. And so, again, what is humanity? It's all these individual things coming together into wholeness.
That was beautiful. Well, and it's so, I mean, it really is true. I think if we look at, I like the way that you describe this as a meality, because we're all living our own realities, is we're all living essentially in our own little universal world, truly.
Mm-hmm. That's why it's interesting how, like, as humans, we can make characters out of each other. And, like, we play different roles in each other's lives. Literally, it's like who we deem is, okay, that person is my best friend. That person is who I love so much. That person I don't trust, right? We identify. And then
Mm.
because of our perspective, it can play out based off of how we're projecting into it. And so, this is why, though, Saturn really does, when we look at these cycles or how even in Vedic philosophy, the archetype of this comes in and it says, you have to be responsible. So if I'm saying that person is not nice, the only person who really gets hurt is me because every time I interact with them, I'm going to go, or I could just set a boundary and find ways not to, like, why am I making them a character or the villain in my play? Right? Saturn's going to say take responsibility of the reality, the meality that you want to experience. But you also have to be accountable. You can't just make a decision that, oh, I want this life or I want to have that. You have to walk the talk. You have to embody and build and do the work that gets us there, which is, again, especially these coming months, we get to touch our toes back into who am I really right now? Where do I want to belong? What is my uniqueness? How do I take what I've built to contribute it meaningfully into the collective?
Wow.
Yes, it is. It's a like big time to digest, and definitely it's important to play. I mean, I know it might sound counter, but it's like it's really great to play right now and give your heart a chance and be curious and be with humans, like, be with people. That's Aquarius, is being with people and doing things with your friends and, not getting lost in things that are just of a low octave and grumpiness for no reason, really having compassion with others. But it's a lot easier to do that when you have it with yourself. And yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Giving ourselves back to ourselves.
I'm obsessed with that. That will be the mantra. Today I give myself back to myself. Ooh,
And then feel good.
so
Yeah.
sweet, so simple, and feels so good.
Yeah.
Feels so, so good. Very being felt.
Yes, it's like a pep talk this episode.
Yeah.
Hey, if you're feeling down, you got this and you
If
got
you're
this.
feeling down, you're not insane.
No, no, actually, honestly, I feel like if people aren't going through some type of confusion or change or shift or just like an oddness, um, are you really present right now? Would be my question. Is like, especially if there's things coming up where I'm feeling like I'm shaming myself or I'm like I'm not as far as ahead as I'd like to be. This is the
Mm.
opportunity to be really compassionate and start to process your past a little different. That it wasn't about how far ahead, whatever that means, but rather it's about how did you use all of the lessons of Capricorn? How did you use these lessons that are now going to be something you can give to the communities or be a tool? Like a lot of things I teach, like I do business coaching, right? But I never, I don't even have a degree from a college. I dropped out to pursue yoga therapy full time. But I can tell you that trust me, I paid tuition through life mistakes. Tuition and life mistakes. And so because of trial error and my own experiences, I feel very confident to speak on different things because I've had to sit there and deal with it, or I've been betrayed by that, or like didn't read the fine print. Like it's important to process those experiences right now and realize that actually those things that you thought you failed at or these things that you felt have slowed you down were either protection, it was the actual value that you were getting out of the experience, and that it was orienting you on the path for your highest good. But can you see how you can use this? And then now what? What are you going to do with that moving forward, that information moving forward?
Well, and I think when you say looking at, how we can use these things, how we can use the experience, that's the agency. That's the self-responsibility that is being asked of us right now. Because I think it can get real easy sometimes to look back at the challenges and to feel really down about it, or to feel, a little bit of like, "Ooh, well, I was a victim in that time period." We're
Mm.
not being asked to be the victim. We're being asked to reassess, right? To make sense of it and then to really hold our own power, like to understand that like our power was born in those things, and our uniqueness, right? And all that we stand for was really born in the trials and the things that we built.
It's so funny when you say that, like assessing and like owning it. Like it's really powerful to own our mistakes and being like, wow, like I probably should have slowed down and read the fine print. I know exactly why that happened. Like owning your mistakes is one of the most liberating things you can do. Because the moment that you own it, and you don't have to tell the world, or maybe there's some people you do, it depends on the situation.
Yeah.
But when you own it in yourself, it is like Avery just said, it's being in your power and then going, all right, that was a book of wisdom that now I get to place in my heart, and it's armor for my path. And now I know better and I forgive myself, and or having compassion with ourselves, or you turn it to something usable because those lived experiences, we're human. There's
And
no
that's just
instruction book.
it's just another form of surrender, right? It's just another it's just truly another form of surrender.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, this was so good. Thank you for
Mhm.
a little matcha conversation.
I know, it was so good. When you texted me this morning, I was like, "That's actually perfect."
Yeah, big time of surrender, being patient, one breath at a time, journal, process. I mean, shoot, if you sit down and write down what are the things I've learned in the past 10 years, just make a list. There's a beautiful prompt. You know, I wish I would have known, or I now know better. What do you now know better? You could just use these as prompts. Write it out, see what magic unfolds. So,
Mel is gonna leave some of these in the episode notes. She's gonna leave you guys with these story notes, these prompts, because truly, and it doesn't have to be like something that's long and drawn out. I mean, grab a piece of printer paper where open your notepad, and I guarantee you can jot it down in 5 minutes and maybe more comes of it, right?
You know me, I believe like the pen is our magic wand, and everything you write
Mhm.
on paper, you can turn anything on paper into reality, and it's just such a powerful filter. I do it all the time. I feel sorry for those one day when I die, the amount of notebooks and how much fun there's going to be so many notebooks because I love writing. So, but it's a beautiful thing. So yes, journal, write, list, draw. Yeah.
That's a big one, draw. So I'm not like the most graceful writer. We've talked about this. Sometimes it can feel real sticky. I'm a big art journaler, so I art journal about it. And that's, I will tell y'all, it's just as cathartic and it gets it out. And, you know, again, there I
Yeah.
am surrendering to the fact that I am not not a good journal writer, but I'm a good art journaler.
No, I love that you say that. And again, this is an example of embrace where you're at, what you love. I used to Mod Podge though. Did you used to Mod Podge? Do you know what Mod Podging is?
I still, so I don't, I know there's like an actual thing that is Mod Podge. I use a glue stick, but it's same idea. Like just like toss it all in there and yeah, scribbles,
Yeah,
drawings,
my
clippings.
back in like 2010, my husband's sister, who's like one of my closest humans, she got me into Mod Podging. So we used to like have our journals. It was like a living Tumblr page in our notebooks.
Yes, absolutely. It's because we came from the Tumblr era, so it just feels good.
Yes, and like journal and then like Mod Podging pictures and flowers and all types of things. Yeah. So whatever is your cup of tea for how you express, but it's a good time of moving the energy because a lot of times too, sometimes it's just a matter like owning our mistakes, owning the Capricorn seasons and what we learned and our processing. That's by expressing, that's going to move the energy. It's so powerful.
Right, moving it through you in whatever way feels good and natural to you. Obviously, don't force it because it's not, it's not going to be expressed in the way that you want it to. So find, and it's trial and again, trial and error, finding how to move through it.
And also,
Absolutely.
some people, I really invite to use your yoga practice to practice listening to your body. Like, do you want to do that pose? Do you feel called? Where do you feel repelled? And playing with the listening. And what is it like to, go rogue a little bit in your practice? I mean, that's what Aquarius is. So, what is it like to just play and kind of go, if you turn on music and just move, or maybe you're watching something online and then you feel called to do other things. Like really listening to your agency is a powerful practice on the mat because it strengthens those neural patterns. So it's a byproduct off the mat.
Yeah. As we start to move in ways, right, and listen to ourselves in ways on our mats, it's just, we take that off. We take it down the mountain with us. That's what I always tell people. I'm like, when we're on our yoga mat and we're doing all the things, right, we're on top of the mountain. But the better that we get, right, when we're on top of that mountain, the better we get when we have to walk down and live in the village. Because we don't get to spend our life on top of the mountain, unfortunately. But
Well,
hopefully what we learn there, right?
yeah, well, we're here to live too, right? Like that's the thing with the yoga stuff. It's like the yoga, yes, you could go be a monk and go sit and meditate forever, but there's also the karma of not doing the actions. Like it's interesting when you look at,
Mm.
the spiritual um, materialism that can happen in this work of like, oh, I trust the universe and I'm not doing anything. Like, our souls are here to experience life, like to live. Like, and my kitty is,
No.
my sage is saying hi. The purpose here is so we can live. So go live your life and have experiences and explore what does your spirit feel called to, right? Like sometimes when I don't know, this is a little hack. If I'm not sure if I should say yes or no to something, I'll just ask my heart and I'll say, do I want to have that experience? Like, do I want to just do it for the experience? You know, this is the F
Mm,
around find out sometimes that comes up. This is the, like, I want that experience, you know, and oh, yes or no. You know, like the Oracle deck that I wrote, and I mean, we still have a few left, but I haven't ordered a whole bunch more, and I don't know what I'm going to do with the Oracle deck for the future. But that was a moment of, I really want to know what it's like to create a deck, like to create a card deck, because I love them so much. Like, ask your heart, what would you love to experience? My beautiful cat Sage, it came over here. Every time she comes near me, I love to like come close. And if she sits on my lap, like I'm gonna stay. I want to experience. So it's just asking, it's just collaborating.
oh, leaning into the kitty
I
cuddles.
know.
Definitely.
Except I don't like when she licks me too much. It's kind of, it's just,
Well, their tongues are like sandpaper.
I
I
know.
did not. I didn't. I don't like when anything licks me, truthfully. It sounded
Same.
so weird. I'm like,
Nope.
don't like it. It's so,
Yeah, no.
please don't.
Our dog like just instinctively like has to lick anytime you put your hand near the mouth. I'm like, ah, yeah,
No, my
my
dog
mother
knows not to. My dog knows not. Like, she'll lick everybody else, but I'm like,
too.
that's not for you and I. That's a boundary.
Self-care, self-care. All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in this week. We'll have more coming, and we will also be having more guests coming up soon.
Yeah, so excited. You guys are in for a treat. We have some really, really wonderful, wonderful people who are just so magical in what they do. Um, so stay tuned for sure.
Yes. All right. Have a great week.